Welcome.
Let me thank the chair and the ranking member, and thank the panel. You know, I really appreciate having time to discuss this issue today. And Mr. Gupta, I'd like to ask you a question, if you may. You made the comment, unless your profits come from deceiving consumers, you should welcome the CFPB's data collection. Could you expand on what you meant by that?
Sure. Thanks for the question. You know, the reason we have the CFPB in the first place is because we had a massive regulatory failure, right? We had a financial crisis that resulted from all sorts of fringe lending that was entirely unchecked. People were asleep at the switch. You didn't have anyone who was looking out for consumer protection. You had the Federal Reserve Board was looking out for other things, and consumer protection took a back seat. And so we created a single agency that's the voice of the American consumer. It's actually standing up for American consumers and trying to prevent the kind of practices. Those practices didn't just harm people who had some subprime mortgages, right? They threatened to harm all of us. They threatened to tank the American economy and the world economy. So unless your business model is based on unfair and deceptive practices, the kind of thing that the CFPB pursues in its enforcement actions and its regulations, you should have no concern about transparency and about the CFPB having that data and using it as a tool to do better consumer protection.
Thank you. So honestly, I have to admit something. When I first saw the panel lineup, I thought to myself that my friend Mr. Gingrich, he has a PhD in history, and he may know a lot about that. But what does Newt Gingrich know about big data? I was just a little surprised by that choice. But it turns out that you actually do know a lot about big data, because let me put it like this. Republicans in general claim that they've collected more than 300 terabytes of voter data, including more than 725 billion data points on nearly 200 million American voters. This information is matched to individuals in voter data file, which also contains personally identifiable information, home address, phone number, email. Not only are Republicans collecting massive amounts of voter data, some Republicans even rent out the data to other campaigns. Well, they rent that data to a list of brokers that lease data to marketing firms and other private entities. For example, presidential campaign for Newt Gingrich, 2012, reported getting $17,000 in the most recent FEC reporting cycle, even though that campaign dropped out of the primary more than 3 months before. A separate company, Gingrich Productions, also uses a list broker to sell personal information via TMA Direct. For the low price of $120 a month, you can get access to nearly 500,000 individuals' personal information who were never before on the market. So I did have my doubts about whether our panel was qualified to offer opinions on such a complex topic, but clearly, Speaker Gingrich, you do know something about making money off big data. So I guess my question is, if it's okay for you to sell big data with personal information, why can't the CFPB rely on anonymous data to protect consumers?
Look, that's a great question. It was as often with you, it was a brilliant setup. It is true that we have carefully studied the 2008 and 2012 Obama campaigns, and it's true that while we're still behind them in gathering metadata, and while we don't have quite the ties they have in Silicon Valley and at major intellectual centers, we are doing everything we can on the Republican side to be at least as good as the Obama team at using metadata. So I think I appreciate your recognizing that while we're second, we're working hard to catch up. Second, the big difference, and you put your finger on it, I can't go to somebody and threaten to cut off their bank loans. I can't go to somebody and threaten to put them in jail. People who happen to be on my list voluntarily signed up to get information from Newt Gingrich and can voluntarily get off the list without having a bureaucrat call and threaten them. If you look at the power of the government, which is always in the end coercion, and you imagine random independent bureaucrats who arrogate to themselves the right to decide what my consumer choices should be, That's real power. We don't have real power. We're just a private company doing private things in a free market, and that's why I am so frightened to see this much power in the government.
And make it a good penny at it at personal data. Thank you, Mr. Gingrich.